Hello friends, welcome to this module. Before we move forward, let me take a moment and thank you for coming that far with me in this journey of Azure Synapse Analytics Service. I hope you are learning something new in every module. In this module, we will examine configuration settings and common tasks that are available to us inside the Microsoft Azure Synapse Analytics Service portal. We will see how it is incredibly easy to back up and restore data warehouse in Synapse Analytics Service portal. Then we will take a look at price optimization and we'll see how you evaluate different configuration suits best for your needs. We will learn about managing workload, which helps solution architect to ensure that data warehouse always have enough resources to hit SLA for classic data warehousing activities like loading, transforming, and querying data. We will learn different monitoring tools like query activity, alerts, metrics, diagnostic settings, and resource health provided by Synapse portal. We will also look at option to submit a support ticket to Microsoft in case you are not able to resolve issue at your end. And finally, we are going to delete all the resources we created during demos. This is very important to avoid any charges when we are not using them. So let's get into it. In this lesson, we are going to start with an overview of the data warehouse. We are going to learn how to scale the compute nodes. We are going to view the activities that are being logged for the SQL data warehouse. We are going to learn how to apply tags, how to apply logs, and how to take a look at various settings that are available to us with our Azure SQL data warehouse or SQL pool. So we start here with our portal. Notice it is paused right now. We need to click on resume in order to resume this database to take a look at some of the information that is inside of here. So are you sure you want to resume? Yes. It is going to take a moment for the request to go through and fire up for our data warehouse. Some of these settings would not be available with a paused data warehouse. This takes a little while, so let's go ahead and fast forward to this being up and running with our Azure SQL data warehouse. All right, so we can see the resume database success, and now we are up and running. The first thing I would like to show you here is right up here, which says scale. Now we choose the scale when we first come in. So let's click on it. So we can come right down here and we can move the scale all the way over to the right, and we can see this is about $453 per hour. And we can move it all the way back, which is good spot to the left. This is about $1.51 per hour. So this is very important to keep in mind that you can have scaling as simple as this for your data warehouse. If you have very complicated queries with a massive amount of information, it's good to just kind of get it over within a short amount of time. But in a lot of business decisions, time is critical. We are going to leave this the way it is, and I'm going to close here. Now we are going to, on the left hand side, first we have an overview, which we are on right now. And as I can scroll down, we can see that in the last hour, we have not had really much going on. We can see a little spike right here when we were actually loading the data. So I can see my notification here and I don't have any, and I can see the features here now. And this is just a different way of getting to the same place. We have our transparent data encryption, we have our auditing, geo backup, advanced data security. We are going to take a look at some of these other settings as we move along. And now here we have our activity log. We are not going to have a lot of activities here. We just resume our data warehouse. However, this is a great place to just go in and take a look for some of the activity that has happened recently into your database. And then we have tags. And Microsoft Azure can receive a tag. A tag is a descriptive categorization that you put on any kind of resource so you can search by category. One example would be billing. If you have certain clients or certain departments inside of your organization that are responsible for paying for different resource in, then that would be an example of the use of a tag. And then we have diagnose and solve problems. Some of this is unavailable. And if we come here and scroll down, we can see that we have some common problems that you might have on your data warehouse. Well, it is very convenient place to come in and take a look at that. Let's go down here to the setting and maintenance is schedule. We can schedule maintenance on our data warehouse as we move along, and it automatically take care of it in the background. So you can choose the various settings here like Saturday, Sunday, or in between Tuesday and Thursday, and then what day, what time window and everything. And Azure will be making sure that they have a maintenance on this schedule. And then we have a quick start here. Discard any changes. This is the great repository for information that might help you with the documentation, with quick starts to things like that, and with pricing, with the SDK's PowerShell, and different tools that might be useful to the upkeep of your data warehouse. And then we have a geo backup policy. So what policy do we have for backing up our data information? The information that you are going to have any data warehouse is probably going to be some of the most important information that you have within your organization. SQL Data Warehouse automatically back up to the region pair on your behalf, so it is already set up. However, you can have more needs for a backup, you can do it right here. And then we have connection strings. So if we have different applications and different codings to look at this database, look how simple this is. Our .NET, we have our string right here, and we can simply copy it by clicking here where it says copied. And then we have the connection string for JDBC, we have for RDBC, we have for PHP, and we have for SQL, Go SQL. And then we have properties in our database, and this causes just general information about our data warehouse. I'm going to scroll down and we can see the server name, server admin, logon activity, directory admin. If we want to integrate this with Active Directory, we could do so if we have to. And now we have the log here, and this could be very important to you. You can add a log to this database. Log work like this. If I'm going to add a log, we have two types, either read only and delete. And what this means is that you can have a database and lock it to anybody writing to that database. Make it a read only. And if it's a read only, anyone if try to write anything onto this database, he will get an error. And if it is a delete, no one can delete anything from this database. So you have it here. And then you have export template. We have our export template and a lot of things in Microsoft Azure. The resources are available through a template where you can somewhat create the resource from scratch and have all the characteristics and all the configuration for your original resource. And that we have some other areas that we are going to cover. We have the security and we have some common tasks along with our data. We'll cover those next. In this demo, we are going to take a look at streaming analytics. we are going to learn how to load data through the portal. We are going to learn how to use the query editor, which allows us to query our data warehouse directly through the portal. We are going to learn where we build reports and perform analytics inside the portal. So let's start with the streaming jobs. Now, if we had streaming jobs coming into SQL Data Warehouse, we can monitor those streams right here. A stream is going to be a collection of information that is coming from a point of cell or the Internet of Everything device that constantly and consistently sends information into the warehouse. And sometimes you need to monitor that for looking for a certain triggers that information or a certain type of information is going to send, so you can trigger a certain reaction. Then we have our load data. Now the integration with Azure Data Factory is a huge benefit to the Azure Synapse Analytics. As your data factory allows you to store your information, preparing the information, integrate the information right into your data warehouse. We have our query editor. I'm going to go ahead and log in using my admin credential. Now, notice what happens is we are connected to this database and we can run our queries right from here. We can expand this and we can see what we have all in our tables available. We can add views inside of here. We can generally get to a database without using the Microsoft SQL Management Studio. If you would rather use the portal, you can see it right here. Now, remember that we had a check mark telling about services from Microsoft Azure being up to access our database. Well, this is where that pays off to go ahead and have that so we can run queries directly from the portal, as you can see. Now, moving along, we have our bill dashboards and reports. And this is where the integration with Power BI and some other reporting tools come in handy, to where it is integrated directly into our data warehouse. Our model and cache data. If we are running analysis, then we can simply click here on add, and then we can have our analysis service right integrated with the interface of our data warehouse. That's a big benefit for having our data warehouse. Now we are going to go back, so click on OK. And if you are using Visual Studio, we can open Visual Studio if we like to. And that can open up our data warehouse right in Visual Studio so that we can use it. And then we have our monitoring, which is our query activity alerts, metrics, and diagnostic settings. And then we have our resource, health, and support and troubleshooting. So that is a look at some of the different properties and some of the different tools and some of the different abilities that we have with the Azure portal for our Azure Synapse Analytics, formerly known as Azure SQL Data Warehouse. Let's take a look at backing up your data warehouse. Data warehouse backup uses snapshots, and these snapshots offer a point of time when your database was at certain level, and he can restore to that level. Backups are also used to copy data. These backups will consist of many files because SQL's data warehouse is distributed. So it's in a lot of different places. And this is an incremental backup. So incremental changes are backed up. You have something called automatic restore points. And these are taken several times per day when your database is not paused, and these automatic restore points cannot be deleted. This is because a certain level of SLAs are required for your data warehouse.
And user-defined snapshots can also be taken at any time. So let's go ahead and do that. Now we are inside of the portal and notice that our databases are not paused. So we can come right up here towards where it says new restore point, and I will click on it and I will give it a name. Let's call it as a restore point 1, and let's click on apply, and you can see it's creating a user to find a restore point. So you can see it's really as simple as this. You don't have to say where it goes. You don't have to say how it gets there. You just simply create a restore point and it keeps that restore point for several days. This restore point is going to be a user-defined restore point. However, keep in mind that you have automatic restore points and they are taken several times per day and they last about 7 days. So you can have your restore points that you want to create yourself in case you are doing something to your database or you are performing some kind of action where you want to get back to the point where you were before you did that action, just in case something goes wrong. So that is how you back up a database with the Azure Data Warehouse, otherwise known as SQL Pool in Azure Synapse Analytics. Now that we have backed up our data, we are ready to examine data warehouse restores. Now we use snapshots and these restore to a point of time. These are deleted at a 7 days mark or when there are 42 restore points. They are not available with the paused data warehouse. It's available after the data warehouse drop. So if you drop your data warehouse, these are available for 7 days. Keep that in mind. You can keep your original database or you can restore your database to a point of time. You're charged for premium stored rates and they are rounded to the nearest terabyte. You also have something called geo-redundant backup and restore points. So let's go ahead and restore our database now. So now I'm back to the overview page of our data warehouse and we can come right up here towards it says restore and I will click on it and it is going to find the different restores. It's going to say, well, where is your database and do you want an automatic restore or do you want a user-defined restore point? And at this point, we want user-defined restore point. We can come down here and select we just created one. It is a timestamp, so you know approximately what time and what date you created that restore point to help you out. So we can create up to 42 different restore points and you can see we have our server, we have our performance level, and we could come up right down here towards says review and restore. We can click on it. Notice we are agreeing to term and conditions and it says that you are going to be billed for this and you are agreeing to get billing for that. We have our resource group, our subscription, and all the information about our database and everything looks good. So we are going to come right down here towards this restore and click on it. It initializes, it submitted, and our deployment is underway. We can download the deployment details right here if you would like to. It's all in a zip file. So if you need some information about the restore point itself, you can certainly take a look at that. Now, keep in mind that you can restore to a single point in time if you would like to, and it can also keep your other databases as well. We don't have a lot of incremental information to restore to. We just created this. So keeping in mind that you are paying for this warehouse that's up and running with the DWU or data warehouse unit. And keep in mind, as this is restoring that, it can take a lot longer to restore the database because it is reconstructing the database rather than just incrementally putting the data back in. So your backup could take moments and your restore take quite a bit more time, several minutes. Let's go ahead and fast forward to this being done. So you can see how deployment is completed. That took more than, I think, 5 minutes. So that is how you restore database to a point of time using a user-defined restore point. And you can also have the automatic restores, and it's basically the same operation. Now that this is restored, let's go back and see what has happened with our database. Now we are in the management studio, and you can see right here, look, this is a completely independent database, and this is our old database. So if you wanted to come back in here and take the restore and make it your own database, then you can delete this one and replace it with this one. And that's look at backing up and restoring your database. Thank you.
All right, so next we are going to quickly discuss about the Azure SQL data warehouse scaling. So in SQL Warehouse, it's a pretty simple architecture we have. We have DWU, which we can dynamically increase or decrease as per our need. And DWU, as we know, is the unit to measure resources of our SQL data warehouse. Like it is a blend, it is a combination of the CPU, memory, and I/O. And we can go to the portal and I can quickly show you how to increase that. All right, so I'm into my portal again. And right now I'm inside my Synapse SQL pool. And right there in the overview page, you can see that we have option to pause our compute and to scale our SQL data warehouse. So as you know that pause means we can pause the compute of our Synapse SQL pool when we are not using it. So maybe in the night time or in the daytime or maybe on the weekend when actually we are not using the compute, we can pause it and we can save some money. But anyway, even if we pause it, we have to pay for the storage, and we do not have to do this manually. We can configure it. We can do it through PowerShell, or we can do it through, we can define the data factory script, or CLI, or through different ways we can configure it to start or pause at particular time to save some money. And the next option we have is to scale our SQL data warehouse. So if I click it here, it is very simple. We can see our DWU here, data warehousing unit here, and I can scale it, and I can scale it to whatever is my requirement. And I can see here right now, DW3000C is assigned to my warehouse, and which have the concurrency of 64. And minimum allowable resources per request is 1.5. And here the price is loading, maybe in few seconds or few minutes. And I can see that how much it is going to cost me if I can, if I scale my data warehouse to this particular unit. All right, so SQL data warehouse allows us to scale or pause at will. Scale up, we can do the scale up when there is a heavy demand, and we can scale down when there is less workload there, and we pause to cut the cost. And DW, as we discussed, is a blend of CPU, memory, and I/O, and we can increase the DWU, which will also increase the query performance, and it will also increase the number of concurrent queries and concurrent slot. And as I said, we can increase this DW, or we can pause or run this compute using the GUI or PowerShell or T-SQL or CLI, or through different ways. So this was all about the scaling of SQL warehouse and SQL data. Let's take a look at managing cost for your Azure Synapse Analytics service. Now we are going to examine a web page for the pricing, and I'm going to show you how to get help with pricing details. So this is the pricing page on the Microsoft website. If you want to get here, just search for Azure Synapse Analytics pricing, and it will take you right to this page. I have also included this page link in resource section. Notice a few things up here. You have contact sales here, or chat with sales in case you have any question and need more details about Synapse Analytics. I want to give you a general idea of how much this is going to cost. So we are going to scroll down here. So the first thing is it gives you a guaranteed 99% availability and built-in advanced security features and all the things that we are discussing throughout this course. So here first you need to select the region, and I will select the West US, and then currency, and dollar is fine for me. But if you want, you can change currency here, and display pricing by hour per month. Let's keep it default as hour. If you remember, while provisioning Synapse data pool, we did not have option to choose Gen 1, that was disabled. And Gen 2 is pretty much only alternative that we have these days. Gen 1 has been pretty much phased out, but it seems Microsoft has not yet removed Gen 1 pricing. Hope they will remove it soon. So let's scroll down a little bit below. And we can see here Gen 2 pricing and the different levels that we have here. If you remember, we had this level DW100C while provisioning data warehouse. So another thing to keep in mind is that this is not available everywhere. So it might not be available where you are taking this course. And now I want to take your attention here, this 1 year reserved saving or 3-year reserved saving. This is like if you pay in advance. So you get a substantial discount here. So you can see this 0.52 compared to 1.51, which is by calculation is almost 1/3 of the cost of pay as you go. So here it's roughly 65% savings that you have for buying these hours in advance. If you know you are going to use it, so you can save almost 65% cost if you know for sure that you're going to use it. And if you go down, you can see that it can go up to $450 per hour. So it gives you a good idea of what we are talking about here. So that covers our compute cost that we have. And again, if you need to chat with the sales, just click on chat with sales and they can give you a better idea. So let's scroll down for the storage part. Now storage going to be a little bit different here. The data storage is charged at the rate of $135.17 per terabyte per month. And then we also have an hourly rate here. The storage going to be charged whether your database is paused or running. So keep that in mind. You also have to pay for 7 days of incremental snapshot storage, and you can't go delete this. They need to have this in order to meet their SLA that they have for your data warehouse. We have the price for a geo-redundant disaster recovery. That's a little bit different. That is mostly at rest and only comes up when you need it. And then we also have threat detection. Threat detection comes in at the same price as the Azure Security Center standard. And if we scroll down further below, we can see the FAQs. So for example, when I create a data warehouse, am I charged immediately? Yes. Once the data warehouse is created, you will be billed hourly for compute and storage. So you want to pause your data warehouse to not get charged for it. Second question is, when I pause my data warehouse, what am I charged for? So as you read, compute will not be charged, but storage will continue to be charged. So basically, if you have any questions, you can get them superficially answered by browsing this website. And also, if you have more specific question, feel free to chat with the sales. So that's the pricing for your data warehouse. And as you know, anything with Microsoft Azure is changing all the time and evolving even when I'm speaking. So when you really want to see the current pricing, please do not take numbers from this slide. I would suggest you to visit the page to see the latest pricing. Thank you. Welcome to this lesson on managing workloads in Azure Synapse Analytics. One of the most important things for an efficient data warehouse is workload management. Solution architects want to ensure that enough resources exist to hit SLA for classic data warehousing activities like loading, transforming, and querying data. Also, there are scenarios where it is important for the given queries or set of queries to just run predictably over time. Group of queries competing for resources, and there is a queue of queries, and new query will be added at the back of this queue. But maybe this query needs to run first. Sometimes your next query needs to run immediately. This could be a really important query. For this workload concept introduced in classification. A successful workload management scheme effectively manages resources, ensures high efficient resource utilization, and maximizes return on investment. A data warehouse workload refers to all operations that transpire in relation to a data warehouse. That includes the entire process of loading data into warehouse, performing data warehouse analysis and reporting, managing data in the data warehouse, exporting data from the data warehouse. To give you more control over how your workload utilizes system resources, workload management on SQL Data Warehouse consists of three high-level concepts: workload classification, workload importance, and workload isolation. Let's take a look at the classification workload. Workload classification is the concept of assigning a request to a workload group and setting importance levels. Classification in SQL Data Warehouse is achieved today by assigning users to a role that has a corresponding resource class. We do this with a command, create workload classifier. A classification that is based on a database user will take precedence over a role membership. Let me show you how this works. We start right here, and this is Management Studio. And I'm gonna go ahead and run this query. And make sure we run this query in the master. So let me select master right here. And of course, I'm connected with my data warehouse here. Now this is going to create the login for the prime user. So I will click on execute. And next we come down here. Now we are going to create this user for the login prime user. And I want to run this command in my data warehouse. So let me select that. And if you notice, I'm using if not exist in my commands so that if they already exist, I don't want to create them twice. So let's choose this command once again and click on execute. And if you go my database data warehouse here, and if I go to security, if I go to user, and I can see my prime user here. Now let's go to the next command, which is going to create a workload classifier. And actually this is the command that does what we want to do. And this is for prime user. We are going to have a workload group, and this has to do with the resource class. We have the member name, and this is the user we have logged in with, and the importance you can see right here is high. So let's go ahead and execute this command. Now let me show you what we have done so far. So let's select from the workload management workload classifier tables, and you can see the different classifiers that we have under here and that are available to you. The idea is this, that whenever prime user runs something now, they are going to have a high priority. They are going to be part of the resource class that is going to take precedence over any role membership. Now let's go ahead and look at the workload importance. Workload importance influences the order in which a request gets access to resources. On a busy system, a request with higher importance has first access to resources. Importance can also ensure ordered access to logs. You have 5 levels of importance: low, below normal, normal, above normal, and high. A request with a higher importance will be run before a request with a lower importance, and this can prevent log contention. So I'm back to my management studio. Let's go to another query called importance. And once again, we'll choose the master database here, and we will create a login called important user. And then we will add this user into the login we just created. So let's select the data warehouse and click on execute. So if I refresh here, we should have an important user here. Here we go. Now let's go ahead and create this classifier. Create workload classifier, and notice that it puts it inside of a resource class and the importance is high. So now this classifier is going to be within that workload group and will take precedence from jobs run from other groups. So let me execute this. And now let's go once again and look at this table. And now here we can see that we have our classifier of high importance, and within the group static CRC20. Workload isolation reserves resources for a workload groups. Resources reserved in a workload group are held exclusively for that workload group to ensure execution. Workload groups also allow you to define the amount of resources that are assigned per request, much like a resource classes do. Workload groups give you the ability to reserve or cap the amount of resources a set of requests can consume. Basically, we have two things here. One, we can guarantee an implicit level of concurrency with this minimum percentage resource parameter. And also, we can define the maximum level of concurrency, and that is which the cap percentage resource parameter. Finally, workload groups are a mechanism to apply rules, such as query timeout to requests. So I once again into my management studio, and let's go to the isolation queries. And once again, I will select the master and I will create this login here. And now I will once again choose the data warehouse and I will create the user within that login. Now this next script is going to be a little bit different, and notice here it says create workload group, and that is data loads. And then we have our minimum percentage resource and our cap percentage resource, and these two are pretty important here. we don't want to go on the cap percentage resource to 100. And our minimum percentage resource has to be some kind of number that's going to isolate this workload and give it some kind of priority over other workloads. So we are talking about having all of our resources for a particular workload. And the next thing we want to do is run a query, and this query is going to create the workload classifier. So let me create a workload classifier and then add this group to that workload classifier along with ISO user as a member name. And now whenever a workload is run under this work group, it's going to have this kind of priority and is going to be isolated. So let me create this workload classifier. And once again, if you see this system view, we can see our ISO user into this group name. So with workload management, we can control and prioritize certain actions that happen within our data warehouse. Thank you. Hello friends, welcome. In this demo, we are going to see monitoring options we have in Synapse Azure Data Warehouse. So I'm right here on my portal of Azure Synapse Data Warehouse Analytics Service. And on the left-hand side, if you go a little bit down, you can see all the monitoring options here. We have query activity, we have alerts, we will analyze metrics, and we have diagnose setting. So let's look at all these options one by one. Let's start with query activity. So let me click on that. And here you can see all the activities related to query. So recently when I was recording demo for loading data, I was running all these queries, and you can see logs for all these queries here. And if you click any of these, let's say click on this one, you can see the query which was running for this ID. And you can see the status of query. Most of these queries are completed, but if there is any failure, you can also see those failed queries here. And if you want to see the steps behind the query or query plan, you can go here and there's an option to see the show query plan. And here you can see behind the scene all the steps which were there for this query to execute successfully. So once again, here we can see all the logs related to our queries, which are either currently running or which ran in the past. Now the next is the alerts. In this page, we see all the alerts which triggered in our Synapse Analytics service. But for that, we need to create a rule, and based on that rule, system will generate an alert. So we can create a new rule here. So let's click on New Alert Rule. And here we have to configure, or we have to create this new rule. So first we have to choose the resource, which resource we want to monitor and create an alert on. So let's do a select. And I can choose my subscription here and what kind of resources I want to filter on. And if I want to see all the resources, let's go up and select all. And here I can see currently all the resources I have in my Azure portal. So I have a couple of storage accounts. I have my data warehousing here, my data factory here. So let's choose data warehouse, Azure data warehouse. So I will select here and I will say done. So now Azure will monitor my this resource data warehouse. Now in the next step, we have to define the condition or logic which Azure should see in this particular resource which we have defined here. So let's choose add condition. And here we can see all types of signals and all types of monitor services. And here we have the list of signal logic which we can choose. So we can choose either the CPU percentage, for example, that whenever CPU percentage is more than 50%, or we can choose the data IO percentage, or we can choose the DWU percentage, which is very important because by looking at this alert, we can know that if DWU percentage is above 75%, then that means we have to increase, or we should increase our DWU units. So let me choose this. And if you remember, while provisioning my data warehouse, I configured lowest possible DWU, and that is why you see that many times in last few hours, it has crossed the 80% mark. In fact, it has touched almost 100% here. So I think it is a good signal to set our alert for, and I will come down here, and I can choose which condition I want on this signal. So for example, I can say that whenever my DWU percent is greater than the threshold value is, let's say 80, I should get an alert. And here we can see the aggregation granularity. Let's choose it 1 minute. Frequency of evaluation, let's just choose it 1 minute. That means for 1 minute, it's going to evaluate that if it is more than 80%. So everything looks good here. Let's say done. So now I have a resource, and on this resource, this condition will get executed, which is whenever DWU percentage of my data warehouse is greater than 80%, then what? Then we are going to do this action. So in the third step, we are going to choose what action I want to take if this condition met. So let me add an action here. So here I have one predefined action which will send an email if the condition met, but we can create a new action group here. So let's click on create, and we can give some action group name here. For example, action group 108 action group, and either I can use my existing resource or this default resource for this particular purpose. Again, I have to give my action name. Let's say email to, and what kind of action it is. Maybe I can let some Azure function run against this or send out email. So let's again choose the email, and here I can configure the email on which I want to send an alert. So click on OK, click on OK. And now it is creating an action group which I can configure here. All right, so it's completed, and you can see that my action group name is right here. So now we have set up an alert on my data warehouse for this condition, and whenever this condition met, it is going to send me an email that my DWU percentage is greater than 80%. Now, if we go below, I can give some name to this alert. For example, DWU percent above 80. And I can choose my severity here, which may be, let's say, severity 2. And I can enable it once I create this rule and click on create alert rule. So it is created right here, and if I go here manage alert rules, I should be able to see the alert which I have just created. It's right here. So let's go back to our next monitoring tool, which is metrics. So metrics is basically going to tell us is what is happening with our database. So we can choose different metrics here. So once again, we need to choose what scope we are looking for. So once again, I will choose my data warehouse here, that I want to see metrics around my data warehouse. I can choose other resources also if I want. So let's apply this. And then I want to choose the standard metrics. And here I have a few metrics, again, like CPU percentage, data IO percentage, data storage size, DWU percent, and used and failed connections, and cute queries and all that. So let's once again choose the DWU%, and we can see this matrix here. In last few hours, couple of times it has spiked and went above 80%. If I want, I can choose different kind of graphs here. Bar graph, scatter graph, or come back to the line graph. If you want, you can filter here for what time you want to see these logs. So right now it is the last 24 hours. I can choose, let's say, last 12 hours, and I will apply. If you want, you can add more than one chart here. So you can have another chart, and this chart may be for CPU percentage, and you can see my CPU percentage here. If you want, you can have another chart here, and this may be for let's say DWU used. So as of now, I have 3 charts, and you can keep adding as many charts as you want. And you can also pin this chart to the dashboard. So let's say if I click here and pin to my current dashboard. So if I go to my dashboard now, for example, here, I can see this chart right here. So I can remove it for time being. Let's go back to my Synapse services, all resources, and data warehouse. I will minimize this. So we were looking at metrics. Now the next one is the Diagnose Settings. Now Diagnose Settings tells us what is actually going on internally with our database. So it has some of the logs and some of the metrics to choose from. So for example, and they have given the list here, which is DMS worker, execute request, request steps, SQL request, wait, basics, instance and app advanced, workload management. So we can click on add diagnose settings. And you see here we have the categories from log and metrics we can choose from. So let's say we can choose weights from the log and let's say basic from the metrics. Now it will monitor internally both of these categories and will write the logs into the destination, whatever destination we choose here. So let's say we choose the storage account, and we can configure here which storage account we want system to write logs, and for how many days you want to keep this data into the storage account. You can put here as a retention days. So I will discard it now. I will go back. So with monitoring, as you see, we have our query activity. We can set up an alerts. We can take a look the metrics internally inside of our database. And then we have our diagnostic settings. So that is a look at monitoring for Azure Synapse Analytics database service. Thank you. Hello friends, welcome back. In this lesson, we will learn about resource health, which is another option we have given by Azure to troubleshoot our problems or issues. And we will also see how to raise a ticket to Microsoft support in case we stuck with some of the problem which we not able to resolve by ourselves. So I'm in my portal now, and let me scroll down here, and you can see here support and troubleshooting. And first option you can see here is the resource health. So resource health very closely monitor your data warehouse service for its current and past health. For example, it executes the checks like, is database up and running? Has the server run out of memory? Is the server starting up, or is the server recovering from some issue? Has the database migration service failed to provision? And so on. So Azure Resource Health helps you diagnose issue and provides support for service problems. Resource Health also let you know when your resource has been unavailable and because of what problem it was unavailable. This data makes it easy for you to see if there is any SLA which you are going to violate. So in this case, if a resource is unhealthy, not only it reports it, but also provide additional information through which you can determine the source of the problem. It also reports an action that Microsoft is taking to fix the problem and identify steps that you can take to address that problem. Right here you can see the available, which is the health of a resource. And available means that there is no event detected that affect the health of the resource. In case where the resource recovered from some kind of unplanned downtime during the last 24 hours, you will see recently resolved notification. And there can be different status. For example, there's a status called unavailable. So status can be unavailable, which means that service has detected some kind of ongoing event that has affected the health of a resource. Or status can be unknown. Unknown means that resource health has not received information about the resource for more than 10 minutes. And it can be degraded, which means your resource is available, but it has detected a loss in performance for some reason. Next is we have here the new support request. Now here is new support request page. You can create a support ticket for Microsoft. Actually, first they gather the detail about the issue. They will also suggest some possible solutions. And if that does not work, you can go ahead and submit a ticket to Microsoft support guy. Thank you. And I'm here on my portal. So on my left, I will go to the resource group. And if you remember, rg_synapse, this is my resource group. I created this. And I try to save all my resources into this resource group so that if I delete this resource group, all the resources will get deleted. And I can also see another resource group here, which is default activity log alerts. I did not create it. So Azure created it while processing some data. And maybe Azure used it for temporary purpose. If you see, we don't have anything here. But if you go down, it says clear filters and show hidden. So let me see if there's some hidden resources out there. Yes, we have 2 hidden resources there. So anyway, I don't need this resources or this resource group. So I will just delete the complete resource group from here. Now I need to provide the name of the resource group. So I will just copy it from here and we'll paste it here. And before I delete this, you make sure you understand that this step is irreversible. Once you delete this, there is no way to recover this resource group or any of these resources. So I'm pretty sure I'm not going to use this. So I'll say delete. And you can see that Azure has started deleting these resources. Now, what about my resource group? I have few resources here. If I want, I can also just delete resource group here, provide the name and delete, and this will delete all the resources, my data factory, my data warehouse, my data lake, blob storage, everything it will delete. However, I don't want to delete my blob storage and lake storage for my own purpose because I want to try some more demos and record more demos and upload in this course. So I will selectively delete my data warehouse because I don't need it as of now. And if required, I can obviously create once again. I don't need data factory also at this time, but I want to keep my blob storage and data lake storage for some more time. So I will select these 3 resources right here and I will say delete. Remember, we have delete resource group option here, which will delete the whole resource group, complete resource group with all the resources. And if I select individual resources here, I can delete it right from here. and it says, please say yes if you are sure. I am sure. And once again, I will not be able to recover these resources once I delete this, but I'm pretty sure I don't need this. So I will say delete. And you see that Azure has started deleting these resources. And within few minutes, all these resources will get deleted. So for example, it seems like my data factory, data warehouse, and all three resources basically deleted by Azure. So let me go back to my front page once again, and I can still see my shortcuts here. Let me try access this, and it says resource not found because that is deleted. Or if I say, let's say data factory, resource not found. So with the deletion of that database also conclude our course. So I want to say thank you very much for spending your time with me and learning about the Azure Synapse Analytics, formerly known as Azure SQL Data Warehouse. Thank you. Congratulations! You have successfully completed this module on configuring and optimizing data warehouse. In this module, you learned configuration settings and common tasks that are available to us inside Azure Synapse portal. You also learned how to backup and restore a data warehouse, how to manage the cost of a data warehouse. You learned important workload management concepts like workload classification, workload importance, and workload isolation. We went through all monitoring tools like query activity, alert, metrics, and diagnostic settings. Then we looked at support and troubleshooting options. And finally, we deleted all resources we created through the course. I once again thank you for taking this course. Hope you had a great journey and learning experience. I'll try to keep adding more content and demo in this course. And my one last request, if you have not already, please provide your rating and feedback because that is very, very important for me to keep myself motivated. Thank you very much.